Hello everyone and welcome to Go Again, a fabulous cast. This is episode 8 and I'm Andrew here with you as always. So Fab is gaining popularity and expanding, and those who are passionate about it are becoming exceedingly so. I think that's become very clear, which is really awesome. Many communities across the globe are growing and thriving, and the passion and excitement is evident. This is fantastic to watch and see, both on the boards and just with personal interactions. There are communities, however, like my own, that have yet to be able to get that huge shot in the arm, so to speak, despite having passionate and dedicated players in the area. So what I wanted to spend some time to talk about today are some tactics that we can utilize to try to jumpstart our local communities. All right, guys. Hey, so before we get into the nitty gritty of this, I wanted to just take a quick minute and do some bookkeeping. So in episode 7, it was very clear that a lot of people in the community did not like either what I had to say or the way I said them on a couple of items. So what I did for today, because I feel that a lot of this content's very important, is I actually wrote it down. So I'm going to be actually reading from this, so you may see me not looking directly at the camera for some of this, because I want to make sure that I'm actually saying things the way that I wrote them, so that there's no misinterpretations or that I don't misspeak something and kind of throw off. And I just want to make sure that the content that I'm trying to say, the point that I'm trying to say, gets across, and we don't get off on some other side argument like we did, as it seems like last time. So like I said, before we get into the nitty gritty, I wanted to pause and discuss the approach I'm going to take for this video. So for those of you who know me, and maybe for those of you who don't, maybe it's becoming more evident, I tend to be a pretty to the point person. So as such, I tend to be very objective based in the way that I approach almost everything I do. So that's the approach I want to take today, is to outline our objectives and then discuss the steps that we can take to accomplish those objectives, right? So we're going to lay out what we want to do and how we're going to get there. That's basically how we're going to do it. So Fab, like anything else, has strengths and weaknesses. Right? For us to succeed, it will be absolutely necessary to play to those strengths, utilize those strengths to our advantage, and then also be cognizant of the weaknesses, and those will be kind of the source of some of the challenges that we need to defeat, right? So the strengths, as I see them, is that this game is striking on the table, right? It gets out there, it's really pretty to look at, you've got a whole bunch of cards on the table to start, everything looks really good. The shiny cards, of course, are hugely attractive. Also, it's a really easy game to learn, and it's exceedingly difficult to master, and I think both of those are advantages. As far as weaknesses, the primary weakness Fab has is that it's a new game by a new company, right? So the reason this is a weakness, of course, I mean, there's advantages to that, of course, but the reason it's a weakness is because it mainly affects recognition, awareness, and potentially distribution, right? So we'll discuss why that matters in a second. So, all right, let's outline our plan of attack. So fundamentally, we have two objectives that we want to accomplish. One, we want to foster player and shop interest. And two, we want to convince our LGS that it's worth their time, money, and effort to support a Fab community. So number one is the easiest and most straightforward of the two. Many of these are the obvious moves. A lot of people have been doing these already. The community has already done a lot of moves such as this, right? Demo decks and learn to play sessions are the low-hanging fruit and absolutely necessary. I know a lot of people have already been doing this. I want to give shout outs to people who have already been not only been doing this, but down in the Dallas crew, someone had posted on the board that they had, I think, like 30, I don't know, it looked like 30, it looked like 50, it just looked like a ton, but he had taken all of his extra commons, or I assume his play group had helped him, but they had taken all of their extra commons and stuff and put them into decks, and they were just going to go give those decks away at a local con to help people get interested. That's fantastic, right? People like that, that's how you succeed in getting your community done. And obviously we all understand stuff like that, running learn to plays and stuff like that. That's very obvious, and a lot of people do a very good job of getting that done. So those who have tried learn to play or casual play meetups with little or no attendance, though, like myself, I've done a couple and I haven't had very many people come out. It's important to not lose heart. Those people will come, and eventually you're going to be able to get your interest. And unfortunately for us, sometimes advertising your event isn't enough, right? So, and this is where Fab's strength, I think, really comes to our advantage. I don't think that, Fab has some fantastic art, and throwing up the flyer may be catchy enough, but the flyer may not be enough to get people to come in. Where it really comes down to is if you let people see you playing the game, I think people will actually be more interested than if they just see that there might be a new game that they could go play on a Saturday, right? So to that end, right, if you show up during an open play or another tournament, just throw down with a buddy and start hacking at each other, and someone, I can almost promise you, is gonna sit down and ask. They're at least gonna come by and ask what you're playing, right? So even try a Friday Night Magic or something like that. Somebody's gonna stop in between games and at least ask you, and at that point, right, to coin a fishing term, right, fish on, right, set the hook and get them in. So yeah, foot traffic is really the key for setting up our learn to plays, right? So maybe it may be easier for us to get a learn to play scheduled on like a Monday night or something like that when maybe a store doesn't have as much going on, but it might actually be better to not even do an official learn to play. You just show up during a Friday Night Magic or during a Saturday Yu-Gi-Oh tournament or whatever it may be, and just try to get eyes on playing the game, right? Just try and get the foot traffic. So getting the game visually in front of people is a must, and there are so many options to don't count on them coming for you, right? You have to go to them, right? And by so many options, I mean there's so many options of games and stuff to go do and online games and all of this, right? Just get the game in front of them, and I really think that the shinies are going to start attracting people. So I think most of number one, right, we could talk about it forever, but I think most of you guys get number one, which is how do we get people interested, right? I think most of the people get that. Like those of you who are trying to build a community, I think most of the basics are there. So let's not spend much more time on that. What I want to spend more time on, of course, is the number two item, right? Which is how do we convince our LGS that it's worth throwing resources into building a fab community? That's really the gist of number two, right? So for a community to succeed long-term, it has to have a pipeline for growth. This increases a community and provides backfill for attrition. Such a pipeline is almost impossible without a centralized location. I do want to be clear, I've known several play groups who do quite well in like a basement or they play out of a church. But that said, these communities are more at risk of losing or more at risk of falling apart when they lose a key player or they lose a couple key leaders than something that plays at a store where there's more of a pipeline for backfill. So is it impossible to have a play group that succeeds, out of your living room? No, of course not. Is it impossible to have one that doesn't have a store? No, of course not. It's just significantly easier for you to fill that pipeline with people because life happens, right? So you want to be able to get people to come back in the game. So how do we convince our LGS to support the game in our community? That's the question. So I firmly believe that any successful plan will be to approach the store only after we have considered the store's point of view, right? So what do I mean by that? This means considering the economics and logistics of the situation. Now, especially with some of the passion that I've seen and interacted with some of the fab community, a lot of them seem very convinced that their way is right. And I want to speak specifically to those people, right? So just because we're passionate, given our passion, just because somebody doesn't agree with us doesn't necessarily mean that they are wrong or that they're not going to work with us or that they don't like us, right? So it's important to consider the other person's point of view, specifically in this case, the shop's point of view, if we're going to be able to build a long-term relationship, right? If we approach the store on our terms, will they let us do our learn to play? Probably. But will that long-term relationship of a give and take be there? Probably not. So what are the store's main concerns, right? There are three, right? The obvious one is financially. At relatively tight margins, can the store afford to have product and take up shelf space, right? That's what we need to ask ourselves. Two, perhaps of even greater concern to the store, is space and manpower. And then number three is opportunity cost, right? What opportunity cost means is that sometimes it isn't about whether they're making money or not. It's about whether they could be making more money with the same resources somewhere else, right? So let's keep these three concerns in mind as we kind of talk about our approach. So to me, perhaps most important is to approach the store as a community versus an individual. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, instead of having Andrew go to the store and say, hey, do you carry fab product, or will you carry fab product for me, or are there people here that play fab, or will you let me run a tournament? Instead, how about you just have a play group, right? You, your buddy, some other people. Your just play group just shows up a couple weeks in a row, hang out, engage onlookers, behave, present. Then that will help present a much stronger case, asking the store if they're willing to carry product, than just one person asking them over and over and over again, right? And to that end, right, do not harass the store. You can apply pressure and you can be quite obvious, but don't overreach, right? And when I used to work for a game store, actually, and this was a long time ago, it was very obvious when one play group or a small group of people was trying to convince us to do something and make it not look like it, right? One of the things people will do is they'll do the call barrage thing, right? They'll call the same store at different times, trying to get different shifts to artificially make it look like more people are interested in the game, to try to get them to do product. And let's even assume that you're smart enough and tricky enough that you're able to fool the store into doing it. That's still not going to work out for you, because what's going to happen is the store's going to say, all right, we have 20-person interest or whatever. They're going to buy product, and then the product is just going to sit on the shelves, and then they're never going to refill that product, right? So even though it will succeed us in the short term of getting product on the shelf, it's not going to succeed in the long term of making them want to carry the game. And that's ultimately what we do, is want them to carry the game and support the community. Right? So don't do the call bomb thing. Also, we can try to kickstart the product by asking if we can place an order with them, right? This is a great thing. I did it in the past for a different game with another store, a different store than the one I play at now. I got a group of people together and we bought a case, right? We had the store just put in the order for us. We could have gotten it online, of course, but that wasn't accomplishing our goal of getting the store to foster the community and hold tournaments and stuff like that. So, right. So what we did is we went in and we said, hey, here's, what's the cost for a case? We'll go in on a case together. And then what happened then, and what will happen a lot, is by the time they go in and they look at making the order, maybe there's shipping concerns or something like that, they may just go ahead and order additional product on top of that, right? So yes, you get your case, you have to pay for your case, but now they have some product that they can put on the shelves and they can start to build your community with. So that's a tactic I've used before that does work. So that's something you can consider if you can afford it. And then that does a couple of things in of itself, right? So it demonstrates the store that you're not only committed to the game, but you're also committed to them, right? So you're not going to go buy your stuff online once they stock the product. And then while they're placing the order, like I said, they may well decide to order more product, because at that point they're establishing their logistics lines, or establishing relations with distributors. And really, they've just kind of gotten the ball rolling, so they went ahead and pulled the trigger on more. So lastly, it's responsible to consider logistics. With LSS being small and relatively new, distribution pipelines may not be easily open accessible to your LGS. This may be why some regions have it and others don't. Some areas do, some others don't, right? This can have a direct impact on the discounts and costs to the store, and thus their margins. And that's a huge factor which directly affect their willingness to accept the risk of a new product, right? So you do need to consider that when you're approaching them, just in that if you don't understand why they may be hesitant or pushing back on you, there may be reasons such as that you don't necessarily understand. So you need to be flexible with that, and at least understanding of that, and not get frustrated about it. So because this is targeted as a competitive game, and very much so, and almost a little aggressively so from some of the community that we've talked to, perhaps one of the ways to build a community will be to run a tournament. So if your goal is to create an active competitive scene, this may be one of the only ways you can do it, right? A lot of active competitive people are only going to come out if there's something on the line. So a good way to motivate a store to support you on this is to offer to share or even absorb the kit costs, right? Have them contact whoever they need to get you a kit, and now you have a tournament kit to run. And now that they've gotten the tournament kit, they're sure as heck going to give you space to run the tournament. So, maybe you have to bite the bullet initially, but it can help kind of kickstart things and get it in the arm. This also leads us into concerns of space, manpower, and opportunity costs, right? Which we talked about, which was another one of their concerns. So it goes without saying that you're going to have to be the one to run the event for them, right? You don't have to want to make them commit resources beyond even just the space that they're using. And then, of course, you have to be reasonable and start small with your space concerns, because they're not going to cancel like a Friday Night Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that for this. So if your objective is to do this, make sure that you start small and ask for reasonable things. All right, so my final point was one that I imagine a lot of you aren't going to want to hear, but I think it may be important almost than anything else. You need to present yourself as a leader when you approach the store, and you need to act professionally. Part of running a group or being a leader at the store is that you're representing the store, right? So I know that you don't necessarily work for them, but you are running their event, and if something happens at that event, it's going to still be on the store. So they are going to be looking for people whom they can trust, right? So the store will only trust you if they believe you can run something in a positive force, right? If you can be a positive force. Their own reputation and income depends on it. So I mean, I'm not a crazy person. So look, I get it, we're gamers. I get that it's different, but appearance does matter. So I'm sorry if that bothers you, but it is true. So I'm not saying put on a collared shirt, but rocking your tatted Slayer shirt and that haven't showered since last Monday look that may be all the rage or whatever, that's not presenting your best self, right? So if you're going to approach a store like that, again, they're gamers, right? They're reasonable. I'm not saying that like you have to have a suit on. That's not what I'm saying. But again, just remember that the way that you look and the way that you conduct yourself is going to be important to succeeding in your goal of getting them to want to support the community. And then lastly, as part of this, rejection sucks. I get it. And uncertainties are frustrating, right? Them saying no or them saying I don't know, that's very frustrating. But the approach in which you do this matters. So don't let our passion and excitement for this game get in the way. Don't demand to them, right? Make requests and ask questions to understand their concerns. And if they say no, don't get upset or frustrated. Just try to determine what steps we can take to address their concerns and to meet any requirements that they may lay out. So these are just some suggestions and tactics to help those of us who are still trying to build a community. Like I said, I've used many of these in the past for other things that have been successful, and sometimes they don't work as well, right? But just throwing them out there. So these, of course, aren't catch-alls, and perhaps you guys have other suggestions that have worked for you, and I would love to hear them. Please leave them in the comments. But ultimately, just remember that it's our job to build our communities, right? It's not the store's job to build a community, and it's not LSS's job, right? It's their job to get us the tools that we need, but it's our job to keep the community strong, positive, and going. So for those of you who have succeeded in doing this already, that's awesome. Congratulations, and good job and good luck in keeping it going. But for those of us building, keep sticking with it, right? Even have to tell myself, right, on the struggles I'm having with my community that, you know, it'll work out. We just need to keep a positive attitude and keep pressing at it, and it'll work. So for a final word, once we are successful in getting a store to carry product and support the community, we of course need to do the right thing, which is support our LGS, right? Like that does matter. If we want our community to be based out of there, we need to support it, right? So yeah, that's it for me today. This will probably be the last Fab video for a good while. I'm still trying to get a good lay of the land. I want to put some effort into getting my community going so I can get those gameplay videos up that I've been wanting to get done. And then, you know, I'm also kind of getting the feeling that a large portion of the community just doesn't really like the product that I'm offering. So I'll be taking a step back from Fab for the foreseeable future while I try to get a community going, like I said. And anyway, I did want to thank you guys for the ones who have been nice about it. I do want to thank you guys for watching while you have, and for the rest of you guys, good luck. So, all right, so I hope to see you guys some point in the future. But as always, go Commando.